Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. Welcome to the Clutter Fairy Weekly for July 14th, 2020. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to the Clutter Fairy Weekly. It's our weekly webcast and podcast where we talk about all things organizing, and we get those ideas about what you think is important from the comments that you make on all of our channels. So we really appreciate that you do that.
If you're joining us in the Zoom meeting for the first time, you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another subtopic. You can also use the raise hand feature to let me know that you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. We're streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can also share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. And during the webcast every Tuesday, you can talk to us directly by calling 669-900-6833. Use meeting ID 993-419-863 to join the meeting. All right, Gayle, let's get to our topics.
Okay, well, we're starting today on a sad note. We learned that a friend of ours in Houston had passed away yesterday. Mary Beth Smith was a brilliant, kind, funny lady who worked as a Feldenkrais practitioner. With her work and her generous spirit, she'd helped hundreds of people improve their either artistic or athletic performance, to move with greater ease and relieve their pain and feel more comfortable in their bodies.
As Gayle and I were preparing for today's webcast, I found myself thinking about a phrase that Mary Beth used to use a lot: successive approximations. This is a technical term in various disciplines, including mathematics and behavioral psychology, and Mary Beth frequently used it to describe the way that we can move forward toward our goals with gentle, subtle, sometimes tiny movements in the right direction. We hope that we at the Clutter Fairy are helping people make successive approximations toward the lives that they want to be living. And we're dedicating today's show to the memory of Mary Beth Smith.
And Godspeed to Mary Beth.
Yes. Our featured topic today: how do you make sure that your project is moving forward? How do you keep your goal in sight, and what counts as a win? We call this episode Metrics and Milestones, Measuring Your Organizing Progress.
This topic is all about the strategy needed to help you stay in the game, to stay focused on the task, to keep going, and to finally get it done. We're going to suggest some strategies that take some time and effort in and of themselves, so it may appear that we're adding to the burden of work. And in some ways we are, but the added processes we're going to cover here today are to help you keep going. And because measuring success is a positive and powerful motivation to keep at it. We all want the fabulous finished project: a beautiful room, a space that is easy to live in and to clean, a home that feels welcoming to others. And measuring your progress while you work to accomplish that goal is support along the way, so you keep at it when your interest flags and you're sick of doing it and you feel defeated by it and generally want to give up on the goal. If you've been measuring your progress, you have the charts and the lists and the photos to revive your interest and to remind you of how far you've come and that you're making headway when you're feeling negative. So let's talk about some general strategies today that help you measure your progress. The first one is to set the obvious goal, right? It's hard to know whether you've reached a destination if you don't know where you're going. So visualize what you would like your organized space to look like or how you plan to use it. Set specific goals like, I'm going to set up a small office space and an area for scrapbooking in the spare bedroom. Or I will reclaim sufficient space in my pantry and on my kitchen counters to be able to make meals on a daily basis. If your goal feels too big a project to start with, then break it down into smaller phases. Like, I will reclaim space in my pantry to make it more usable for daily food prep is an interim stage from the larger goal of making your kitchen be fabulous and usable. So that's one, set the goals. Number two, set a timetable. So you need to decide how soon you would like to achieve this goal. It's okay to be ambitious, and we will try to be ambitious, but be aware that it's a common mistake to underestimate how much time it takes to clear the clutter. We all think it will either go super, super fast or it's going to take forever. but it's actually always somewhere in between that. So remember, it took a long time to get the current mess you have, and it will take an investment of time to undo it. Consider an upcoming event as a good target, like I want to be done before my friend comes to visit at the end of August, or I want to be done by my birthday, or I want to be done before school starts. If you have an event to shoot for, it's also part of helping you keep motivated. There's nothing like my mother-in-law is coming to visit to spur you into action. So, and public viewing of your space is also, it's sort of it's an added motivation that other people are going to see what you're doing. So if you create a goal around other people appearing and seeing what you've done, it will help you stay on target as well. So that's the second thing, setting a timetable, what deadline you have. Then you want to set appointments to do the work. This is number 3. So once you have an idea when you'd like to have the project completed and a rough guess at how long it will take you, that's, you're going to aim for something that's 3 months in advance. You can make dates with yourself and your helpers, if you're going to have help, to work on the project. So don't just say, I'll work on this when I can. That's way too squishy and soft and non-committal and too easy to walk away from. So what you're aiming for is to set a concrete goal and to set concrete appointments to help you get to that goal. You want to block specific hours on your calendar. And be realistic about your stamina when you're doing that. So an 8-hour day is probably not realistic. I'm going to clean the garage and you're going to do an 8-hour day in the garage in this heat. I don't think so. Or even, I'm going to be working in the air conditioning, but you know that you can't stay focused for more than 2 hours at a time, or that your energy runs out after 90 minutes. Or if you work at a physical task for 4 hours and lunch break and 4 hours, that you're exhausted and it takes you 3 days to recover afterwards. So you want to build your appointments around your energy level and your ability to stay focused. There's no wrong answer here. The goal is just to book appointments that you can accomplish and get somewhere, make some headway. Like, approximation, like Mary Beth says, you just want to be making incremental progress towards your goal, and you want to do it in a way that you can keep at it over time. So if you give it everything you've got all up front on the first day, and then you're wiped out for 2.5 weeks after that, then you've really kind of sabotaged the project at this point, right? Because it's going to be more than 1 day's work. So you want to pick the appointments that you can reasonably accomplish and repeat over time and come back to it without being destroyed, physically wiped out. Exactly. You understand what I'm saying? You don't want to be obliterated by the work that you're doing. You want to be able to keep at it. And so pick appointment slots that work for that. You're aiming for slow and steady progress. So step number 4, be willing to adjust your expectations. So if you find that the time you've committed and the energy you have available aren't going to get you to your goal by the target date, then either you have to adjust your end date or schedule some longer appointments. And you might consider, if you're wondering whether you're going to accomplish the goal, if your standard appointment is, if you think that you can work for 90 minutes at a time and get something done, and if you block the 90 minutes out that you think you can work and you don't get to your goal, then I would suggest that you don't alter all of the appointments, but say every other appointment, instead of 90 minutes, you give yourself an extra half an hour and go 2 hours. So give yourself a little stretch and don't do it 100% of the time, do it every other time, and see if you can add in a little extra time that way and get to your goal. Better to add it at the front end than at the back end. If you get done early, woohoo, you can just celebrate. And we don't want you to create a bunch of appointments that are too slow, and then you have a hard target at the end where you're trying to get it done, and you have a whole lot of work to get in a really short period of time. I'm thinking of that in terms of a move actually project that I have. But if your goal is to get packed before you move out, for instance, instead of decluttering the house, if you're trying to get ready for a move, your move date is a hard date most of the time. Like we have to be out by the end of August. So that there isn't, other than a day or two, there's not usually a lot of wiggle room there. So that's kind of like, I'm getting married on this day, like the date's not moving. So you want to put more of your effort towards the front so that if you find that it's taking longer than you think, you still have time to adjust the appointments, to make more frequent appointments, make slightly longer appointments to make sure that you get to the end. And I just gave that advice to somebody about a move.
And it's totally okay to be ready too early.
Yeah, right? Yeah, if you guys...
Your movers don't care if you finished packing your boxes a week ago. Their feelings will not be hurt.
That's so true. And won't you be excited if you do? And you know what? If you do, if you finish before your goal, you can come on here and lord it all over all of us and tell us all how you finished 5 days early, and we will make big cheers for you.
And even better than that, you can get a good night's sleep before your move, which almost nobody ever does.
Right? Exactly. So that's a move-specific version of the hard target, but any kind of a hard target would be one that you want to make sure you have enough room to accomplish it without jamming it all up at the end. Okay, so we are going to move on to the tools for measuring your organizing success. So aside from the plan to measure, the plan to generally keep yourself motivated and going, let's talk about some of the tools. So the first one that we came up with was a vision board or a vision statement. And if you're an arty kind of person, then you'll want to do the photo cutout version of this. And if you're a writer type person, you may want to just do the writing part, whatever makes you happy. So the idea is to collect some images or write some verbiage that expresses the look or the feeling that you like your space to reflect. So include phrases or short sentences that capture the goals and the objectives. Preparing a meal is fun and easy. My bedroom is an oasis of peace and rest. I can get to work quickly and find everything I need during my workday. You can sort of visualize the end result in feeling or thought or pictures, whatever feels like a motivation to you, whatever is the visual reminder that you can keep in place and review anytime you need a reminder of why on earth you're working on this project. It's part of that measuring where you're going. So if you have a vision of where you're trying to go, it will help you measure progress against it. Use your camera. That's a great tool. Take before pictures of any space that you start or any area that your project involves. You want to be able to refer back to these because we forget how dense it was. We forget how high the piles were. We forget how many pieces of the room were blocked off and inaccessible. As you clear them away, you forget, because the end result, and I've said this before, the end result is negative space. It's clear floor. It's uncovered, uncluttered surface. And so as you work towards and accomplish your goal, you forget how much you have hauled away or moved or processed in order to get there. And the camera and a picture of that starting point is a perfect way for you to go back and go, wow, here's the photo of what it looked like before, and here is what it looks like now. And that is a shocking change. When we were power washing the driveway, I took a picture of Dee Dee in the middle of there was a big square block of the driveway, and she was halfway through it. And so half of it was clean and looked, like light tan colored, and half of it looked almost black from how dirty and, wet, moldy it looked. And I took a picture of that to show the contrast, because I can look at the driveway now and go, yeah, it looks really clean, but I can't remember how bad it was unless I look at this photo and see what in essence looks like a black and white cookie. My driveway looked like a black and white cookie. And so that photo gives me a perfect reminder of how much work she did and how great and fabulous the results were at the end. And these photos of your starting point will be a great, shocking reminder of how much work you've done.
It's just sort of in the nature of human memory that we make a big change to better condition, and we sort of forget what the previous condition was because it's sort of it's easier on our brains somehow
to let it go.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the photo, I sometimes look at photos of places that I used to live, and I kind of go, oh, when did we have that cabinet over there?
Right? You learn to live with where you are, and so having a photographic evidence will help you stay on target. It'll help you see how much you've done.
Yeah.
So the next tool is calendar. Mark the calendar and your target completion date, and schedule the times on which you've committed to work on the project. That's going to be how you know that you're ticking away. If you are paper-centric, if it feels better to you to go mark off the block or fill it in with a marker or check it off on the calendar so that you can see a successive growing collection of I completed this appointment today, I completed this appointment today. And just like people do when they're trying to convince themselves that they need to exercise and they set their exercise appointments and go check them off, making that ever-growing list of the children's version of you get a gold star on the calendar. It's collecting those checks, collecting those stars, whatever works for you. If you're the creative type, you can make a paper calendar and make it pretty and give yourself, stickers that are flowers or stars or whatever makes you happy. Star Wars heads, whatever kind of little happy stickers you want to use. It's just a matter of accumulating a visual representation of where the goal on the calendar that you're trying to reach, the date goal, and how much work you've done along the way to get there. So create a calendar, whether it's electronic or paper or hanging on the wall, and use it as a way to check off and visually see how much time and effort you have accumulated towards your goal. It'll feel like a lot when you start seeing all those little boxes checked off. It's like, oh my gosh, I've been working on it so much time. The next tool is a timer. So you can use a kitchen timer with a mobile phone alarm app or any kind of timing device to keep you on track for manageable work periods. So if you have trouble once you get started making yourself stop, so you get wound up and then you sort of work beyond your physical capacity because you're all focused on it, then I would use the timer to remind you to stop before you get burnt, because you don't want to burn yourself out early on and not be able to continue to do the appointments.
Yeah,
some people
work so long that you don't leave the time you'd allocated to clean up. Right,
that too. You want to be able to stop and put things away until your next work period, and so you want to have that available, that time available. And some people, they need the timer to stay with it for the allotted time period. So if they're going to work for 90 minutes and they're bored after 10, the likelihood that you're going to wander off is pretty high. And so if it is a chore, and if you commit to the timer and say, okay, I want to leave, I'm desperate to leave, I wish I could leave, can I burn the house down yet? And if you are feeling that way, sometimes the timer will be like, I can do anything until the timer goes off. I have set it for 90 minutes. When the 90 minutes is up, I get to run out of the room and not think about this until the next day. And so I'm going to use the timer and say, okay, I'm actually a grown-up and I'm going to keep working on this even though it annoys me to no end. I'm going to keep working on it till the timer goes off. And so it works in both directions in terms of keeping you on task and letting you know how much time you've gotten done, and letting you know that you are accomplishing what you committed to in terms of the appointment time. If you're going to work for 3 hours, maybe you want to use the timer to remind yourself to take a break for a few minutes. So if you're going to slot a 3 or 4 hour time slot in, you can use the Pomodoro technique and set it for 25 minutes and work for 25 minutes, and then you get a 5-minute break for potty, drink water, walk out of the room for a minute, and then come right back and set another 25 minutes and repeat over your whole work slot. However you want to use it, it's a good way to track the time periods and to keep you focused on those time periods.
Gayle,
Okay, go ahead.
Question from Charity, who's watching on Facebook.
Hi.
Do you have a number on, is there a cluttering to cleanup time ratio? I mean, do you have a rule of thumb for that? Like if you've been working on the project for 55 minutes, allow 5 minutes for cleanup?
Oh, good. Okay. Well, there's a couple things that affect that. One of them is, are you working in an area that you are going to be able to walk away and leave in the middle of its destructive mode until you come back again? Like if you're in a junk room and nobody's doing anything in there, and you start the project and you make a big mess, and then your time is up and you can walk away, then what you really want to do is, all that you really need to do at that point is gather up your work tools, make sure you know where, if you have scissors or you have tape or you have a glass or a snack plate, you can take your stuff back to the kitchen. You just have to do a little bit to reset you for starting the next day. But if you're working in an area where you're working on the dining table and everybody's going to sit down to dinner later, and you really have to clear it back off and reset it before you start work again, you just need to take that into account and make sure that you have enough time to get it back to where it needs to be.
Well, and Charity added, and this is a really good point, I have found about 1 hour of decluttering takes about 1 hour to put stuff away in other places in my house. So part of the answer to the question is whether you're organizing a space that's sort of complete unto itself, or a space that's crowded with stuff that belongs somewhere else. And you're going to have to stop and find places for those things so they don't create new, fresh problems somewhere else in the house.
Well, and if you're going to go all the way around your house, then you can go put things in the right room without putting them away. And when you get to that room, you can accomplish it. Or if you want to do it as you go along, then, it sounds like if you know from experience that you declutter for an hour and then you have to take an hour putting stuff away, then you know that you need to make a 2-hour appointment to accomplish those two things, right? Like that's part of the process. So you will learn by experience how much and how long you need to go put stuff away. And then I guess I would ask, if you're spending an equal amount of time putting things away, you might want to make sure that you are vetting the stuff properly. Make sure that you're not putting away something that you don't need to keep. And that your ability to make that judgment call will get better over time as you are clear. The more that you clear, the more you know what you have, then you can make better judgments about, do I need this or don't I need it because I have another solution somewhere else. And so you will be gaining that ability to evaluate as you move along.
Well, and one strategy we've suggested before is that, in your set of tools for working on organizing, you have your trash bag and you maybe have your recycling bin. You can also have your goes somewhere else in the house bin or box or basket, and
exactly
treat that as a separate project later where each of those things can get the amount of time consideration that it needs, to decide whether you're really keeping it. You're working in the bedroom and it doesn't belong in the bedroom, but now is not the time to decide am I keeping it? And if so, where does it go? Then it just goes somewhere else in the house.
Yeah, the box of it's leaving this room box, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have to go take them all out at once if you don't want. Like that can be an appointment time that when you get through all the way through the room, then you can make an appointment about taking that box and going and distributing it around as well. You sort of work it into the time. And I guess it depends on, is 50% of the contents of the room going out to go somewhere else, or is it
5%?
not?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe it's a fluke that you spent an hour decluttering and now you have an hour of things to put somewhere else. Or if that's the standard metric, then you just have to build it in that way. And I don't know if it would be easier to focus if you spend 2 hours working in the room and then your next appointment is 2 hours of the things that you found that need to be put up, and spend 2 hours putting those things up. So you get to decide which one works better for you. You may like it that you work for an hour and put things away for an hour, or you may want to stay focused for 2 hours and then spend a whole different appointment putting things up for 2 hours. So it's really up to you about how you feel like it works with your calendar and your ability to focus and how motivating it is to you. Do it the way that makes sense to you. And so I guess, your original question, is there a metric? And I would say yeah, but it totally depends on your situation and your details. And so generally, at the very least, you're going to have to gather the supplies you're working with and take out the trash and take out the recycling that you found. And then, so you're going to need 10 or 15 minutes to do that. And at the most, you may have to reclaim and reset a space that you're working in, and you need to give yourself enough time to get all that stuff put back together for reuse every time. And as you work and do it a couple times, you'll realize, oh, I only gave myself 20 minutes and that wasn't enough. I really need 30 minutes to reset this room before we can use it again. And so you'll gain that experience over time. And as you learn, you'll adjust how much time you need to set aside to do it. So one more tool we have for measuring your success is checklists or spreadsheets. So this is sort of the gamification of measuring your progress, and you can break the larger project down into as many smaller discrete tasks as is practical to earn yourself a lot of small wins on the way to the ultimate goal. So an example would be, I'm going to declutter the room, and that includes here the tops of these pieces of furniture and the floor and the closet and inside the closet and on top of the desk. And so you can break those down into smaller areas, and I have now cleared off the desk, and that is a win for me today.
The other upside to breaking things down to smaller tasks,
pieces,
and this is something that kind of comes from David Allen, getting things done, is that sometimes you put something on your to-do list or your checklist and you get stuck on it because it's too big. So
because it can't be accomplished in one day.
Clean up my email. Well, clean up my email, that's going to take 93 hours. So, what you put on your to-do list instead is clean up email from last Thursday and Friday, or empty the top rack of the dishwasher,
Right. Yeah.
However small it needs to be so that it's not going to overwhelm you.
And that you don't have to wait for weeks and weeks and weeks to get to the win. If the project is declutter the house, well, that's one line item on your task list, but being able to scratch that one off is going to be months away. And so creating a checklist, creating a spreadsheet of the project's interim steps, so that you can say, now I've gotten that much farther, I've gotten that much farther.
Well, and making sure that
give you the win.
Any step that's contingent on another step comes later in the process.
Yes.
So, you can't mop the floor until you've picked up all the junk off the floor, and you can't pick up all the junk off the floor until you cleared enough stuff to be able to get into the room and walk around, and so
Yeah.
on. And so breaking it down into, well, this is something I can do without any other, without satisfying any other conditions first. That's a great first step.
Right. And the idea that you are making a list of the next right step,
Yeah.
what's the first thing I have to do towards accomplishing this goal? What's the next step? What's the next step? And all of those discrete steps each are contingent on the previous one being completed. And so you should be able to check off all of those pieces as you go along. And creating a spreadsheet with that list is extra work for you, but it's also a way for you to bake in measuring how you're doing and being excited and rewarded and enthusiastic about accomplishing the steps along the way. And so having that checklist or spreadsheet is great.
And getting
Okay.
that endorphin hit when you check something off.
Right. And, I laugh about it being the gamification, but, what do we do but sit around and play the little games on the phone where we're, think about Candy Crush. The point of Candy Crush is to draw a line and connect the candies and they all break. Like, what is that? That's complete waste of our time. And yet we will sit there and try to make those things happen over and over and over again. I don't play that one, but I do some other ones that's similar. It's like the whole point of that is as a game is meaningless, but we can use that innate desire to accomplish the little, goal by making our cluttering project into that kind of game and measure our project as a game and gathering, can I put a check mark off every day? And that is a motivation and a stimulation that provides the endorphin, just like Ed said. And instead of wasting our time on the phone, we're playing a game that is actually pushing us towards a goal that we want. And so totally worth the effort. Okay, so here's how not to measure your progress. You do not want to compare your space to the impossible ideals like the Pinterest boards of beautiful houses that everybody posts, the furniture store showrooms, the decorating magazine spreads that are that frozen moment in time where they've made it all gorgeous and nobody breathes and nobody walks, and then they take a picture.
And then the kids come home from school and it all
Right.
explodes into disorder.
It's all destroyed. Celebrity homes you've seen on TV, that is not real. That there's like a whole army of people that make that real. And so measuring your progress and your space against these ideals are probably not going to be motivating. They're probably going to serve they're going to be the demotivating factor instead. They're going to make you feel bad and make you feel like you can't get there and it looks terrible. And then you just feel bad about yourself, and that's not the goal here. So you don't want to compare your space to homes of family members of friends that have significantly different jobs or different commitments or lifestyles or habits, or even people that relate to stuff in a different way than you do. So measuring it against your sister-in-law who makes you insane anyway, and then her house is always perfect because she's a super neatnik, and measuring yourself against her is not a realistic measure, and it's just designed to make you suffer. So we don't want you to suffer. We want you to measure in a way that is rewarding and a positive to you. And so if that person doesn't have kids, doesn't work full time, it doesn't have your pain management issues, doesn't have your they throw things away super easy without thinking about it, then they're not the person to measure against, because you know that you're going to not meet their target because you're not them. So don't use them as a measure. But don't measure yourself by standards that are imposed on you by anyone who doesn't share your space. So in other words, if you don't live in the space, you don't get to vote on the space. That's what I'm saying here. So, you know, whatever critique your mother-in-law is making about your home is unimportant because she doesn't live in the house. So you can just ignore her vote because her goals and her measurement of the space is not important. And it's certainly not going to be motivating to you that your mother-in-law thinks that you are doing a bad job. So ignore her and don't use her as a measure. That is not a positive measure.
Just smile and nod.
Smile and nod and go, I'm not listening to you. I'm not listening to you. Instead, set your own standards for success. So decide which surfaces will be kept clear except for which specified items and how many. So here's the sofa end table, and it can have a lamp and coasters and a decorative object or two. Or the kitchen counters will be clear except for the 4 appliances that we get out every single day to use in the kitchen. So you get to decide what your standard for success is and what you're aiming for, and that's a measuring focus that you want to have. Decide in the goal setting phase of the project what can remain visible and what needs to be stored out of sight. So as you're setting your goals, you are setting what you define as the standard for your success, and that's the measure that you are aiming. That's what you're measuring against, what you think is success. Exactly, not what other people think is. So what can we measure? We can measure hours or minutes spent making progress on the project. You can measure the number of bags or boxes that have been donated to charity. You can measure the value of the dollars that have been donated. How much is the stuff worth that you have been donating, and watch that number get bigger and bigger. You can measure the number of bags of trash or recycling that's been removed from the space. I use that regularly. I make a big point with clients when I'm taking stuff out to my car. Oh my gosh, we're putting 10 bags of stuff in my car. Look at that. It's a big motivator to remember we just spent 3 hours and look at all this stuff that is now going out of the house. And having a picture of that, or a track on a chart, or here's your spreadsheet, and you go in and you put, you know, bags to the trash, bags of recycling, bags of donation, and you count 2, 3, 7, and watch those numbers just get ever bigger. That's a great way. That's a great concrete measurement that will be really motivating and rewarding when you get to the end. Maybe you want to track the years or the months of receipts or records that you reviewed and sorted and filed. Anything that you consider a metric of success, it's your space and it's your project. So you get to define a win. You get to define, I'm counting the item of clothing that I take to the resale store. I'm counting the books that go to the library. I'm counting the inches of shelf space that get cleared. Or I'm counting how many drawers get organized, or how many files. Maybe you want file drawers that have been sorted, or boxes of paper. I have a client that is constantly putting paper in to be shredded, and so she gets to this 5-box threshold, and that's her trigger to go take them to the place where she shreds them. And you can measure and count boxes of shredding going out. Like that's a reasonable, if you're doing a paper project or you're doing an office project and you're sorting a gazillion papers as part of what you're working on, then counting the boxes of shredding that go out, totally worth keeping a little chart, keeping a little pad, keeping a little spreadsheet, and keeping track of that, because you will forget and you will be thrilled to see, look, I've taken 35 boxes of shredding in the month of July. Like, won't that be a shocker? And it will be a very visual, concrete reminder that you have actually been doing some serious work, and be proud of that. And so we want you to be able to pick a measurement that you think is generally concrete and easy to track, and make the effort to track it, because you are actually building a way to do your own happy dance about how much work you've done. There you go.
Well, and it's there's a real temptation to sort of devalue what you've already accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to sort of forget about it and let it go. And that's why we encourage people to hang on to it, to create some records, to create a
chart.
To save the checklist, save the chart. Leela mentions measure by areas. She says, I'm always celebrating that I no longer have to store stuff under my bed. Yay, bye-bye spiders.
Right?
And Deborah suggests weigh bags of things going out, so you could keep track of the kilograms or pounds.
That would be fun, right? Pounds of trash, pounds of recycling, pounds of donation. That'd be interesting. So if you want to accomplish that, then part of helping you measure is creating an easy way for you to weigh the stuff. And so finding a scale that you can easily put a bag or a box on and read the measurement and add it to your list. Set up a measuring statement, an actual weighing station, so you can make that happen.
Wolf, watching on Facebook, commented, it's really nice to hear chronic illness or pain brought into these discussions. It changes things, and lots of organizational and cleaning, decluttering experts don't address those issues. And what a great impact these conditions have.
Well, they drain your energy, and a lot of times I hear people, like, if you overdo, then you sort of set yourself back several days that way. And so trying to push past what are actual physical limitations sort of is it doesn't work as it doesn't get you there, right? It's not about having the grit and forcing yourself to do something so that you can get something accomplished. If you are fighting a physical condition or a level of pain, then there's a whole lot that goes into managing and staying on top of your abilities as they are. And you don't want to destroy yourself trying to get your organizing project done and then really upset your physical condition. So what it means is that you have to take that into account when you're planning how much time you work and how you can do it over time, and recognizing that that's your reality, that's where you're coming from, and that's what you have to accommodate. So for some people, it's that they can't work in the afternoons because the kids come home from school at 3, and so they can never do an appointment at 3 o'clock. Like, they accommodate their ability to work on the project around their family obligations. Well, you have to accommodate around your physical capacity. And it's just the parameters that are part of your life. And so everybody has some. And I hear this, the curtailed physical capacity is something that gets reflected back to me a lot, because a lot of my clients need help because they're older and because they are less physically able to do it by themselves. And so if you're standing in that place, acknowledging that that's the truth and working around it, it's just the parameters that you have to function in. And I think that you don't want to determine that you can do nothing because of your pain or physical capacity. You probably can do something. And then the question becomes, can you do enough to get there without other people helping? And there may be a point at which you decide, this kind of work is too much for me, and I'm going to have to let other people come and do it for me. And that's a reasonable, solution to the game as well. I mean, I'm working on a move, and the client is, she had cancer and had cancer treatments, and so she is still on physical restriction about she can only pick up 1.5 pounds, and she can't bend over, and she can't, there's a long list of things she's not supposed to do physically right now while she's still recovering. And so she needs to move despite the fact that she is unwell. So that's why I'm going to be there, because I have to go be her for a while because she doesn't have the physical capacity. So don't be don't let that create a level of judgment on yourself about it. You're just working from where you are in reality. And in that, whatever that space is, you can still accomplish something. You can still work. Will it be slower than somebody that's young and physically fit and, 30 and super organized? Yeah, it'll be slower than that. But in your environment, does that really matter, right? Like, you just need to work with what you got. And I think that the issue is also that when you are working with a physical capacity, you sort of have a limited bandwidth of doing something physical before you run out of steam. And so if you're giving away all of your physical capacity during the day to getting up and getting dressed and getting fed and taking care of kids or animals or husband or whatever, if you're giving it all away on the things that are going on in your life already and you don't have anything left over to do organizing, and you're not likely to for some period of time, then this is where I think you have to recognize that you have a limit and ask for support and get other people in. Now, maybe it's that you get somebody else in to deal with the animals or the kids so that you can spend your limited capacity on the organizing. Like, you can spread the work around that way, but you're going to have to plan around how much you've got, at however short or long it is. And it will make it longer to get there, but you will get there eventually. I promise. It can be done. It'll just be slower.
Okay,
right?
Gayle, we are about out of time.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Before I ask for your final thoughts on the topic, let me make a couple quick announcements. I want to remind everyone that our next webcast will be Tuesday, July 21st at noon Central Time, live in Zoom and streaming on Facebook. We'll be talking about collections. For many people, collecting is a fun and satisfying hobby, but the passionate pursuit of the complete collection can become a monster, gobbling up more time, money, and space than we can afford. And collecting behavior also goes beyond so-called collectibles into accumulations of other kinds: office supplies, hair care products, tools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
We'll talk about where the impulses to collect come from and how to get that beast under control. Come join us next week for Beanie Babies, Snow Globes, and Imperial Stormtroopers. Collection or chaos?
Collection or chaos? There you go.
Okay, Gayle, final thoughts on measuring your progress.
So here's my final thought. The ultimate measure of the success of your organizing projects is whether your space is better supporting the life that you want to have. If you're finding it easier to do what you want to do, to live according to your values, to do your job and take care of your family, and if you're having fun, then your project is successful. So aim for accomplishing what you find rewarding and supporting of your life and the improvement of your life. And if you are able to measure and accomplish that, I think you have changed your life, and congratulations. And we will do whatever we can to support you towards that goal.
Okay. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live to receive notifications about upcoming events. We invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. I threw you a curve.
You did.
You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook, or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please send us your questions and topic suggestions in the YouTube comments or anywhere you find us online. And you can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Yay. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are so happy to see you, and we will see you next week.